Hello. So for this assignment, I have decided to do a video. I actually really enjoyed doing the video last time, kind of talking things out. I feel like that's one of the better ways that I learn and comprehend things is by talking it out with my students or just in general. And so I made some notes and stuff here on the stuff, so I may be looking this way. But just kind of going through the prompts for the assignment. As far as what stood out this week, one of the things I did make a note on was different languages and cultures are a blessing to our classroom. And I think that's vital, as far as students experiencing other cultures, teachers experiencing those cultures from those students as well. And again, just having a diverse classroom and a diverse student body. I mean, that's how the world is, right? So the more diverse it is, the better experiences you have, and the more things that your mind can open up to where people come from, different backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, creeds, religions. All of those things is important for young people to be involved in and to be connected to, because of that's how the real world's going to be when you get out in the business world or go to college, things like that. It's going to be a much more diverse culture than what you grew up in, especially here in a small town. And then also culturally responsive teaching, I think, is vital also to what we do as teachers and educators. I mean, each student comes from somewhere different, right? They have different backgrounds, different cultures, different family situations, different just different lives in general. And so as teachers, we have to be able to connect with each student. I think that's important, not just based on their culture or heritage or anything like that, but just based on their needs. I mean, some students are very responsive in class and do well. Other students don't say a word in my class and make A's. And then there are others, obviously, that act out, or that come from situations that they don't have anybody to push them, they don't have anybody to make them accountable for their things. And so you have to do things a little differently with those kids and try to encourage them. And I try to make sure that my kids believe that, if nobody else cares that you're doing well or that you're learning or going to be successful in life, then I do, So I think responding to each student's cultural needs and where they come from and the things, especially when you have English learning students. I personally have not had one. I know we have one here that doesn't speak English. I think she's a junior this year, because she communicates a lot of times through a translator on her phone. But we do have some programs for her. I know one of the teachers that's been working with her. So again, we don't have that as much here, although we do have a pretty good diverse student body. We don't have a lot of Hispanic students here. The videos I found very intriguing, especially the one about Central High School in Tuscaloosa, which I mean I'm a little familiar with growing up near Birmingham and the different schools and Central and Paul W. and Northview or Northridge. So I really enjoyed that video. I related a lot to that because the situation that a lot of kids grow up in, the way that the coach was with the kids, holding them accountable, making them responsible. Kids, especially young boys, young men, want to be disciplined. They want to have someone in their life that holds them accountable. And so it's important. I have a lot of kids like that. I have a lot of kids. One of my basketball players is a great student, really smart kid, has no parents in his life. He bounces from house to house, and so he has a tough life. And I hold his feet to the fire on stuff. I make him complete assignments. I check up on his other teachers. And I really try to push some of these kids to do that, and because they don't have that in their life. And I related a lot to that coach and their situation and the way that they are with their kids. Again, it's not necessarily the African American population. This is a very rural very underprivileged area. There's not a lot of businesses or anything around here. I mean, the closest big town is at least an hour away. So a lot of farmers, a lot of just tradesmen, and so just not a lot of wealth around here. And the kids are really just, a lot of the kids don't have a lot in their life, and so especially through sports, coaching basketball, I really hold their feet to the fire, and I can use that to motivate them, right? The similar way that he did. Kids really want to participate in sports and things like that, and you have to hold them accountable in every facet of their life if they want to be able to do those things and be successful. He talked about one thing in the video he talked about was, it's not always going to be easy. He spoke to one of his players, a couple of his players. He was saying, you just going to quit when it gets hard, because in life it's going to be difficult, and you got to be able to respond to that, and you can't give up, and you can't quit. So sports is a good way to associate that to the rest of your life. I actually had a conversation just last night about one of my students with another teacher, and just about, some of the things that we'd both been seeing. He's a good kid, good student, and, he's kind of bouncing around and, not being as responsible, doing the things he should do. And we were kind of discussing how some of the things we could try to do or that we've seen from that. On the second thing here, one thing that that really stuck out to me the last couple of years teaching U.S. history is we spend part of the state of Alabama curriculum is, a 4-week, 3.5, 4-week on the state of Alabama. When we do that, we kind of start with the beginnings and then into exploration. We get into the Civil War, and then I always end on the Civil Rights Movement, because I think in Alabama the two most important, impactful parts of history of the state of Alabama are the Civil War and then the Civil Rights Movement. I mean, that's the two things, the most known for, I guess, but I always like to spend that last week on the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Shuttlesworth, people like that. And one of the things I like to do is that's right at the end of the first semester. So that last week of exams, we have an exam one day and then a couple of days where we don't really do anything. And we always watch Selma. It's a really good movie. I think it was nominated for Best Picture. I think Oprah had a part in that. She plays in the movie. And so seeing that movie, a lot of the kids are really shocked by the actions of the white people and some of the lawmen, and even Governor Wallace, things he said, things he did. And I can't tell you how many asked me, did that really happen? Or, did he really say things like that? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And you forget that young kids like this don't realize, how those things really happen in Alabama. Yeah, I guess growing up in the 80s and the 90s, maybe it was still fresher. I know my dad was in high school when school was integrated, in our county. And so, maybe I just grew up knowing more about that stuff. And I talked to them about, the movie starts with the 16th Street bombing in Birmingham. And I've been there, I put my hand, where that was at, in Civil Rights Museum in Birmingham. And and they're just shocked by the actions and the things that they did and things that happened at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so that's one of the ways, you can stand up here and teach about it and talk about it, and them not ever really feel the impact or see that. But the movie has some very powerful scenes, coming across the bridge and out in front of the courthouse on their knees. The 4 girls, like I said, at the 16th Street Baptist Church. I mean, until you kind of see that and feel that, it's difficult to grasp that. And so I've used that the last few years to really kind of drive home the importance of that movement and some of the things that the African Americans in the state of Alabama went through, and throughout the country, as far as equal rights and things like that. So it's important to use stuff like that, to get kids' attention. I've even had a few of them ask me if we could watch it again, because we watched it last back towards the end of last year, and they wanted to watch it again. Yeah, I mean that's just the kind of the impact I feel like that movie specifically has had. Um, as far as using things like that to connect with kids and to open their eyes a little bit. Um, and again, I challenge my students to think outside the box a little bit. I tell them part of history is you read one side of the of the history, you read another side of the history, and then you want to make your own opinion, your own judgments about what you may think have happened. You have to always realize that in history, usually the victors are the ones writing the history. So you got to take everything you read with a little bit of a grain of salt, because how the losing side, some different things may have happened. They may have won some more battles. They may have had some different issues that you never might know about because you're only getting the side of the victors. So I always tell them there's always bias in media, who's reporting it, who's paying them to report this. So always read as much information as you can about a topic and come up with your own opinion. So it's important to do that and we do a segment usually once a month where we watch the weekly news, like a news segment, ABC News or NBC. I'll switch it up, and so just to follow, politics, and I tell them, this is history that we're watching, things that we watch. We've talked about the Minneapolis situation that was in the news. What's going on with Venezuela, Ukraine, Russia. I mean, all these things are historical, and they'll be in history books one day. And so I also tell them they're young people. They're 15 to 16 years old. In the next presidential election, a lot of them will be voting. It's important for them to know and be informed about what's going on in the world, and to make a conscious decision about what they want to do. On the third thing, I really enjoyed that. I wish my teacher knew thing that you had mentioned. I'm definitely going to integrate that into my class. At some point, I will put that. I'll do that assignment and see what my kids come up with, see what they say, because I'm very interested, I'm very intrigued by what I may get from some of my students, especially if you can get some of them to be candid and honest, and something that they wish maybe no one else knows. I've had students do that. I've had students come talk to me about things because I try to be personal. I try to be the one that can be there for them. I don't push students off. I want them, if they have nobody to talk to, I want them to know that they can come talk to me, and I'll do everything I can and advise them in any way that I can. So I really enjoy that. I like that idea, and I'm definitely going to integrate that into my classroom. And finally, as far as building community and literacy, reading and writing, I really want my kids to be educated. I want them to be able to read and write. I want them to be able to read and think for themselves. Like I said previously, I push my kids to be educated. And honestly, I push a lot of them to want to get out of here. There's just, in this area, there's not anything. You know what I mean? There's a town about 20 minutes away. It's got a big Georgia Pacific plant. A lot of people work there. But outside of that, I mean, until you get down into the Panhandle, or down into the Mobile or Daphne, Spanish Fort area, I mean, there's nothing. And I've seen kids, a lot of their parents just got swallowed up here. And I want my kids to want more than that, to want to, especially some of the ones that come out of bad situations. I try to tell them like that. You don't want to end up like that, right? You want to be more than that. You don't want to end up in that same situation. And this is the best way to do that. This is how you can get educated. You can go to college, you can get a degree, and go move as far away from here as you want to and never come back. And I want my students to do that. I want my students to think that way, to have a better life than the one that they've been given. Again, I mentioned before, my basketball players, if they miss assignments in my class, I want them to practice. I'll pull them from some of their enrichment classes or something. I'll pull them in here and make them do assignments. If teachers come to me and say, hey, they know they can come to me and say, hey, that he's missed these 2 assignments, or he was sleeping in class today. and I handle that. Like I'm telling you, like that you have to take care of this before we even worry about anything to do with basketball or any extracurricular stuff. So I really push my kids to want to do that way, and we do multiple assignments as far as reading primary sources, learning what primary sources, writing essays, things like that. So, reading and literacy is extremely important, especially in history. You have to be able to read and know what primary sources are, secondary sources, how to write essays, how to learn. Primary sources is the best way to get people the way they think about things, the way they feel about things. You get more than a sense of, A, B, and C did this, X, Y, and Z did that. This is how A felt. B did this because of, and you get a personal sense of why they made the decisions or what happened. So I really enjoyed talking about this stuff. I can talk about it all day. My players accuse me all the time of just going on random speeches and just rattling on and rattling on, and I have a tendency to do that. But I really enjoyed doing these. I've never done something like this before. But to me, talking it out and thinking about it and really learning about yourself and learning some of these things. Like I said, these classes I've taken stuff from these classes and integrated them into it. Again, the I wish my teacher knew thing. I love that idea. And so yeah, I mean, other than that, I like I said, I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy teaching my kids, and I hope to continue to do well and finish up this master's degree and be able to give my students everything that they deserve. Thank you.